Daisy.
And I'm Terry.
And this is the Monday Mindset Podcast,
where we share things of interest to us and hopefully to you.
So let's get started with episode number 201.
We're in the next era now, Daisy. And this week, it is Daisy's turn to share something with us. Daisy, what do you have for us?
Well, Terry, as promised in the last episode we recorded, I'm coming back with a bit of a repeat topic. And I think I mentioned it in the last one I shared with you, which was another bite-sized episode from Rangan Chatterjee's Feel Better, Live More podcast. And this one caught my eye at the same time, was fairly close in the list. And I thought, it'd be interesting to see if she has something different to say on the same subject. And she kind of has some things to add, I would say, rather than different things to say. So this episode is entitled, Do This Every Day to Boost Your Brain Health with Dr. Wendy Suzuki. And I wonder if you can guess what she's going to say that she does to boost her brain health every day.
Well, based on the repeat nature of this, I think it's related to movement or exercise.
Yes.
Awesome.
Absolutely, it is.
Can you send me my prize?
Yeah, it'll be a workout video. And the full episode that it comes from is called How Exercise Changes Your Brain and Why Anxiety is Your Superpower. And actually, there's another interesting bite size about the Why Anxiety is Your Superpower, which I might share next time. So yeah, there's not much difference really in what she's saying, but she does do a great job of explaining a bit more about what is going on in the brain. So I thought you in particular would like this. Dr. Wendy Suzuki is a neuroscientist and a professor of neuroscience and psychology at New York Center for Neuroscience. Her 2016 book, Healthy Brain, Happy Life, is a thought-provoking, life-changing look at the plasticity of the brain and the research-based ways we can change it for the better. And by all accounts, from the way they were talking, she does a lot of research herself. And so Dr. Wendy goes on to explain why she starts her day every day with 30 minutes of exercise, and that she calls this the perfect preparation for her working day. And Rangan asks her why she does it. So she explains how she knows from her own research and the research of others that every single time you move your body from walking to more vigorous exercise, and she does a cardio weights workout, that's her 30 minutes of exercise she does every morning, neurochemicals are released in your brain. So things like dopamine, serotonin, noradrenaline, but also growth factors. And she calls this, and I really like this, she calls this giving your brain a wonderful bubble bath of neurochemicals. But what do these neurochemicals do? Well, dopamine and serotonin make you feel good and bring your energy up, which is a great way to start your day. And the other thing that happens, she says, with movement is that the functions of your prefrontal cortex, so behind your forehead, get sharper. And so again, this is why she does it first thing in the morning, to prepare her brain for work so that she starts her day happy, motivated and focused. And she said the other reason she does it every morning is to build that habit. Every morning, first thing, 30 minutes. That's when she finds it easiest to fit into her day and make it a lasting habit. And Rangan at this point shares what he does. He does a 5-minute strength workout every morning while his coffee is brewing in his PJs, he says. So it really is just, something that he does pretty well as soon as he gets up every morning while he's waiting for his coffee to brew. And he wrote a book about this, Feel Better in 5, which talks about all sorts of things that you can do in 5 minutes to enrich your life across the board. I forget the exact areas he talks about now. There are a few, but, mind, body, and some other things. And he has all sorts of 5-minute interventions you can do to help these. And so it's a quick routine, but it's also attached to an existing routine that he does every day that he doesn't think about. So that's going back to, James Clear talks about this, doesn't he? Attaching it onto something else that's already so established that you don't think twice about it. If you can combine those two, link those two together. And he talks about how he thinks we've been conditioned to thinking that there's no point doing something that's only for a few minutes, that you need to do something a lot more substantial for it to count. But he swears by his 5-minute strength workout that he does every morning, just in that space of time. He's waiting for his coffee to brew, that otherwise, what would you be doing? Scrolling on the internet or whatever. He says, but just that 5 minutes, he really thinks makes a big, big difference. And she says after this, yeah, this is the most popular question. And this comes back a little bit to what you were talking about last week. How little movement do I need to do to get these benefits? And she says the answer is simple, that there is a significant reduction in anxiety and depression levels. And that's not clinical anxiety and depression, but your overall levels in just 10 minutes of walking. So this differs a little bit from the last episode I shared where he was talking about studies that were done on 5 minutes of walking. But, by the time you're out and about, you might just as well do 10 as 5. She says that this is the minimum of time to be shown to have an effect. But as I say, 5-10 minutes, not a great deal in it for argument's sake. So this 10 minutes of walking will significantly decrease negative mood states and increase positive mood states. And this effect, she says, can be immediate on anxiety levels. But why? So back to this bubble bath of neurochemicals, the dopamine, serotonin, noradrenaline. And as an aside, she says these are common ingredients in antidepressants. So it's a good, natural, free alternative to that. And he asked her about her research. And she says that mood change is one of the most consistent, strongest effects of physical activity. And she talks about how the hippocampal cells have been studied extensively in rodents. And again, we talked about this last time. She says there's no exact prescriptive amount, but she cites a correlation study done in Sweden in 2018. And this was a 44-year follow-up study done on 300 women. So back in the 1960s, they characterized this group of 300 women in their 40s as either low, mid, or high fit, as in fitness levels. And there was no intervention done at all. But they came back to them 44 years later and asked what their status was now that they were in their 80s. And relative to the low fit women, the women that were high fit, categorized as high fit in their 40s in the 1960s, had staved off dementia by an extra 9 years.
Wow.
So that's quite something, isn't it? And they didn't give details about, what exactly that means, what would be an example of low fit versus high fit and anything in between. But yeah, the point is that it's going to make a difference. And she goes on to talk about what this actually means. And she says that exercise increases growth factors. So increasing the number of hippocampal brain cells. And she says that this doesn't cure dementia, but it makes your hippocampus, in her words, big, fat and fluffy. And that means it takes longer for any disease to get in and do the damage. And normal aging and dementia both attack the hippocampus. So the more you can do to make it bigger and fatter and fluffier, the harder it is going to be for anything to come in and do that damage. And she says it's the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex that are the two areas that really benefit from regular exercise. And so Rangan asks a bit more about these growth factors. How does exercise give these benefits. And this is where in comes center stage BDNF. You mentioned this might be something. This might have something to do with it. And she says that we know a lot about it from a developmental perspective. As our brains are growing, BDNF and other growth factors are there to make new connections happen. They facilitate connection or synapse formation in the brain. As adults, though, it also facilitates new synapse formation, which is happening all the time when you're learning something new. And this is, you were talking about the old neurobics. And apparently there are only 2 areas in the human brain where brand new brain cells grow in adulthood. That's the hippocampus and the olfactory bulb. I had to do a quick Google here. The olfactory bulb, thank you Google, is a rounded mass of tissue that contains several types of nerve cells that are involved in the sense of smell, in your sense of smell. But the hippocampus is the only place where exercise can stimulate the release of growth factors. Growth factors, she says, are released in your muscles and the liver, which then release BDNF, which goes into the brain and straight to the hippocampus, where new brain cells can then grow. But exercise doesn't do this in the olfactory bulb.
And Daisy, can I add something in here that I think is really interesting about why she's focusing on the hippocampus? Because the hippocampus is the part of the brain that takes short-term memory and transfers it into long-term memory. So as you said, the hippocampal cells in relating to or preventing dementia, we want new synaptic growth in that part of our brain, more important than other parts of the brain, so that we maintain our ability to have memory.
Yeah. Well, as you've done before.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's all right. You just pipped me at the post a little bit. So, but she was saying, and I wasn't sure, because she mentioned about the prefrontal cortex before, and I'm not sure where that comes in. They didn't mention that here, but maybe, in the longer episode. But so she says, if you want new brain cells in the part of your brain that is critical for long-term memory, that is a good motivation to exercise. And that's what motivates her to do her 30-minute cardio weights workout every single morning. She says that the hippocampus doesn't only help us with memory, but it helps us put information together in our memories in new ways. So your imagination. And this, she says, this is what defines us as people. Where would you be without all these memories that define you? And I think this is particularly critical when it comes to talking about things like dementia. This is why people talk about, don't they, losing that person, or losing who they were when they get dementia, and how hard that is to come to terms with. The person that they've known and loved for all these years is there in front of them, but they feel like they're gone because that's the part of the brain that is being attacked, and that's the part that makes you, a lot anyway, that makes you who you are, what makes you individual. And so as I mentioned in our 200th episode, I think one of the reasons I keep coming back to this topic in particular and others is that I know I need to do more and do better when it comes to this area. And I think, I think Dr. Wendy Suzuki, I'm not sure if she's moved me on a stage yet, but she certainly added more fuel to the fire.
Well, I think for a lot of us, one of the benefits of what you just shared is her example, beyond all of the knowledge, her example of what she does is a 30-minute workout that some of us might roll our eyes and think, oh, there's no way I'm going to do that much. But Rangan Chatterjee was talking about a 5 or a 10-minute movement exercise type routine. Because of course, as you've been talking, I've been thinking about, I really need to do more exercise. I need to be more consistent. And of course, during different periods of my life, I have been, but I'm not consistently exercising right now. And this is like kicking me in the hind end a little bit to make it more important. I think I still have always thought about exercise. As much as I say this to other people, there's still part of my brain that thinks, oh, that's because you want to lose weight. And I don't want to do it for that reason. And I feel like that's kind of shame based, and I don't want to shame myself into exercising. But having new brain growth in most important area of my brain for my future self, I owe that to myself. Like, that's a good thing. That's a gift. And so I've been thinking as you were talking, like, okay, how am I going to at least get a short exercise in every day? And then there are other times, like yesterday, I went skiing and it was the toughest day of skiing I've had yet. And I track it. I think I skied for over 2 hours. I'm like, okay, I did a
Wow.
lot of good BDNF, a lot of good stuff for my hippocampus yesterday. But what am I going to do today? Because I want that benefit. I think this is really motivational for me, at least as I'm listening, because that's really important to me. My dad had Alzheimer's, my mom, beginning stages of dementia, many people in my family. And I don't want that to be my path. And so if I can help stave that off, in the example of the research study, 9 more years even, it's worth doing a daily routine. Even if I can't yet commit to a 30-minute routine like Wendy Suzuki's, I can maybe do a shorter one. So I really like this idea.
Yes, and I wonder actually whether she went straight in with that 30
Mm.
minutes or whether she built up. But I like that juxtaposition. When she talks about her 30-minute, fairly intensive by the sounds of it,
Mhm.
cardio weights workout. And you're thinking, gosh, yeah, that sounds like a really good idea. I'm never going to do it. But then I love how Rangan steps in and says, well, yeah, I do this. And I think actually I'll try and find it and add it to the show notes that come out with this episode. I'm pretty sure he's got a video somewhere on his website or something where he tells you exactly what he does for this 5-minute strength routine. I think it's squats for a minute and something,
Mhm.
it's those kind of things that he does. But like he says, he doesn't put any gear on or anything. He's just he's standing there in his pajamas in his kitchen, waiting for his coffee to brew. That feels more manageable.
And one of the reasons I think that's so important, of course, going back to last week's episode about the whole change model, and one of the reasons we don't commit to changes, it seems too complicated, it's too hard, we have all these reasons why we can't do it. There's nothing standing in his way. You don't have to have a gym membership. Like you said, you don't have to have gear. You don't have to have an hour and a half of your day or 2 hours of your day. You're just standing there while you're making your coffee
Yeah,
and you're
you're filling
doing,
empty time.
yeah, and you're buying yourself some brain health with that. That's a really low investment for a really good payoff.
Yes. And as we know, sometimes when you make a change like that, it then leads to more.
Mhm.
So it might be, you do that for a year and then suddenly you do feel like doing the 30-minute
Mhm.
cardio workout. Maybe not even every morning, but maybe a few times a week you feel like doing it when
Mhm.
you've got a bit more time or whatever. So yeah, I'd be interested, to have that conversation with her. Did you go straight in with that, or did you start with,
Mhm.
Rangan's approach a bit more? Not that it matters, but you get where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
And I kind of, I haven't had my routine. I know how good I felt when I had my routine of rolling out of bed and walking down to the sea and getting in the sea pretty much every morning. And I'd like to get back to that. But, that ticks off a lot of those elements. But at the moment, for one reason or another, it feels like too much. It feels like
Mhm.
too much of a time investment. It's difficult with Lila. I've got all sorts of reasons why it's not
Mhm.
going to work. The feces they chuck into the sea every 5 minutes, there, that balance, and you're picturing those scales,
Mhm.
there's too much on the excuses side. But yeah, I struggle to come up with enough excuses why I can't do a few minutes of squats while I'm waiting for the kettle to boil.
That's right. That's right. And it's funny to me that you mentioned his specifically probably involving squats, because it is using a major muscle group and something you can do without any gear or anything. In order to try to be a little more fit for skiing, I have been doing squats because
Uh-huh.
those big leg muscles are really active in skiing when it gets tough. And so I have been doing it, but I haven't been doing it consistently yet. So this is really motivating me to commit to, every day, 3 sets of 10 or whatever it is, but that I need a more actual pattern, not just, hey, sometimes when I'm standing here, I'll do some squats. And that's kind of how I've been approaching it lately. So this is like bumping me up to that next level of let's make a commitment and let's make this change.
Yeah, because who was it? Was it James Clear or BJ Fogg or somebody else? I know it's an example you've used, that he set up the routine of every time he'd been for a pee, he used to do some wall press-ups on the way out. Who was that? Who did that? It was one of those, I
think it was BJ Fogg.
Yeah. And it's attaching it to something else that you do. And if you can link things together. But yeah, I do think that, I mean, not everyone's a morning coffee drinker, but for those that are, that is a good time to be doing something, because it does take some time for the kettle to boil.
That's right.
Or however you prepare your coffee. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to start doing that. I make that commitment.
At the risk of sounding like a 12-year-old boy who's focused on bathroom humor, that idea of the wall push-ups every time he went to the bathroom, and I'm thinking about squats. Why don't I do 5 squats every time before I go to, as I go into the bathroom, do 5 squats before I do my business? Like instantly it's attached.
Yeah.
It becomes a pattern. I do that multiple times a day. I could multiple times a day get a few squats in there. Just ways to keep making this not this big added task necessarily. Now, as you said, it might become that. I might suddenly decide I want to start doing an hour routine in the morning. I doubt it. But doing this little bit, I think it makes it so much more doable to give yourself this future gift.
Yeah. There's another thing we mentioned, wasn't it? Having that really strong why helps tip those scales. And that's a pretty good one.
Yeah. I say this as we're sitting here. I'm going to turn my camera on. Daisy will see this, but everyone else won't be able to see it. There's the Peloton, not plugged in, not set up for use right now, not in a convenient place. But that's another example. I've been postponing that. I've been delaying. Oh, eventually I'll get that set up. I could be doing a quick little, I don't even have to do a long ride on it, just a quick little one even. So, all right, Daisy, you've gotten me going here.
And of course, the big advantage of that is you don't have the risk of go flying over the handlebars and breaking stuff.
This is so true. And this is a big one for me, Daisy. My partner keeps asking, are you going to be ready to go for a bike ride soon? I'm like, I don't think so. Maybe eventually. I get a little PTSD response every time I think of being on that kind of bike.
Disable the front brakes. That's how you do it.
Right.
I don't know why they have them on there.
That's so funny you say that, because I was just telling the story with some people that we met that are big into biking. And we told the story and they said, yep, we have just gone to the shop and had them take out, I don't even remember how they do it now with them, but take out some of the fluid in the front brake or something so that they're not so strong.
Yeah.
So that is going to be my first step before getting on that bike.
There you go.
Good plan. Because that definitely would keep me from ever going on a bike ride again.
Absolutely. Okay, well, until I see you next time, I hope you have a very wonderful week.
And really what you mean under that is, I hope you do your new routine every day.
Eat better.
All right. Take good care, everybody.